I was pouring her coffee when she laughed, called me old news, and everyone joined in. I didn't speak, just placed the cup down and noticed her fiancé's father freeze mid-smile. His face knew something the room didn't. That moment changed everything. Before I tell you how it all turned around, subscribe and tell me which state you're listening from. I want to see how far this story travels. The betrayal didn't begin at that bridal shower. It started months earlier, quietly, politely, like most family betrayals do. When my wife died, I'd set aside part of our savings for Julia's education. Her grandmother adored that girl, said she had a mind built for light. I opened a trust in Julia's name back in 2006, kept the paperwork simple, and made my daughter co-signing guardian. It was my way of keeping something good running forward. Then the years blurred. Julia moved to college, then to Los Angeles, then back north with a marketing job and a fiancé I hadn't met. She called less, texted shorter. That's how family distance sneaks in. Through well-meaning busyness, a year before the shower, I'd asked my daughter about the trust, whether Julia still used it for tuition or housing. She said it had been handled. That word sat wrong. Handled. Like it was a chore, not a gift. When the wedding plans began, my daughter called, saying Julia wanted to streamline things. What things? I asked. The family accounts, the old investments, she said. Gregory's father offered to help. He's in finance, really sharp guy. I didn't object. I was too tired to start family storms, but something in me stayed uneasy. Partridge Holdings. That was the company name on the fiancé's father's card. I remembered it instantly. I'd once exposed their offshore property forgery decades earlier. Different branch, maybe, but same stain on the name. Still, I said nothing. I told myself families deserve fresh starts. 2 weeks before the bridal shower, my bank called. Mr. Carter, your trustee contact changed recently. Just confirming authorization? I told them no such authorization existed. They apologized, said the paperwork listed both my daughter and Julia as joint signers now, with Gregory Miles Sr. as consultant. I didn't show anger. Anger clouds paperwork. I asked for copies instead. When they arrived, I saw my own signature scanned crookedly at the bottom. I never signed that form. My daughter's handwriting sat above it, shaky and rushed. Julia's electronic initials appeared beside hers. That was the moment betrayal took form, not as insult, but as ink. I drove to my daughter's house that evening, the same home where Julia was born. I'd built that back porch with my own hands. The boards creaked now under my weight. Old wood, like me, still holding. Inside, the house smelled of lavender spray and bakery candles. My daughter opened the door smiling, but her eyes dropped when she saw the envelope in my hand. "Dad, it's not what you think," she said before I even spoke. "Then tell me what it is." She explained how Gregory's father had suggested consolidating family assets for better tax efficiency. Julia, wanting to impress her future in-laws, had agreed. My daughter claimed she'd signed only what Julia asked. "So," I said slowly, "you both moved my late wife's trust into a joint account with a man you barely know?" "Dad, he's reputable." "No," I interrupted quietly. "He's familiar. There's a difference." She started to cry, small and quick tears, the kind used to soften consequences. "We didn't mean any harm. We just thought—" I cut her off again, still calm. "You thought the old man wouldn't notice." That was the betrayal's core. Not greed, not malice, dismissal. They'd written me off as fading detail, someone too gentle or too old to read fine print anymore. When I left that night, Julia called me on speaker. Her voice was cheerful, pretending nothing happened. "Grandpa, we're so excited to have you at the shower. Don't bring gifts, okay? Your presence is enough." Her presence in that trust fund was already too much. But I said I'd come, because silence teaches louder than shouting ever could. The day of the shower, I walked in carrying an old wooden box, our family ledger, kept since 1954. Inside were folded documents, property deeds, bank ledgers, even my wife's original trust note in her neat cursive. I hadn't opened it in years. My daughter saw it and asked, "Dad, what's that for?" "Just a piece of our story," I said. She smiled politely and went back to arranging cupcakes. Gregory Sr. arrived late. He shook my hand with two careful fingers, the kind of grip that checks pulse more than greets a man. His suit was too crisp for a family afternoon. "Pleasure meeting you again," I said softly. He flinched at "again," but covered it fast. "I think you're mistaken." "Maybe," I said, "though some names remember themselves." He looked at the box I carried, then at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, he didn't speak. The betrayal ripened in plain sight. Julia's laughter carried through the kitchen, bouncing off champagne glasses. When she made that joke, "Grandpa's old news," the crowd laughed, unaware how right she was. To them, I was history, but Gregory's father wasn't laughing. He knew history had receipts. From across the table, he whispered something to his son. The young man's smile stiffened. Julia noticed and asked, "Everything okay?" Gregory Sr. just nodded. "Fine, sweetheart." Just remembering something I meant to forget. Later, while Julia opened her gifts, silver picture frames, a blender, towels embroidered with initials, her fiancé slipped outside to take a call. Gregory Sr. followed soon after. I stayed seated, still and watching. The sunlight caught the gold ring on Julia's hand, the one I'd given her grandmother on their 50th anniversary. She'd said Julia wanted to honor tradition. I hadn't realized it meant taking without asking. Another layer of betrayal settled in, sentimental theft disguised as homage. When the guests moved to the backyard for photos, I saw my chance to breathe. I stepped into the quiet hallway and heard their voices from the porch. Gregory Jr. whispered, "He knows." His father replied, "Doesn't matter. It's merged now. He can't undo it without exposing his daughter's signature." That sentence was the knife. It wasn't about money. It was about leverage. They'd used my daughter's name as the shield, knowing I wouldn't ruin her reputation to save my pride. They weren't wrong. I walked back into the kitchen, picked up a napkin, and wiped an imaginary spot from the counter. My hands stayed steady. That's how you survive betrayal. You keep your body calm while your heart recalibrates. Through the window, I could see them still talking, gestures sharp, eyes scanning the yard for me. I pretended to refill the punch bowl, but really, I was memorizing every word of their posture. When they came back in, I offered them both lemonade. Gregory Sr. hesitated before taking it. "You remind me of someone," I said softly. "Oh?" "Yes," I said. "A man who once mistook silence for surrender." He blinked, unsure how to reply. Julia called from across the room, "Grandpa, come join the photos." I smiled. "In a minute, sweetheart." They moved on without me, as I knew they would. By dusk, the guests trickled out. I helped carry trash bags to the bin, each one heavier than the last. My daughter thanked me again for coming. I kissed her forehead, said I was proud of her, and meant it in the saddest way possible. On my way out, I saw Gregory Sr. standing by his car, hands in pockets. He spoke first. "You're not going to make this messy, are you?" I looked at him for a long moment, long enough for him to feel the silence stretch. "No," I said finally. "Messy isn't my style." "Good," he said, exhaling. I added, "But clean doesn't mean forgotten." He froze. I turned, walked to my Buick, and didn't look back. On the drive home, I realized the money wasn't the wound. It was the forgetting, and memory, when it wakes, remembers everything. The road home stretched quiet, Just the hum of tires and a slow sunset burning behind the hills. Somewhere between the traffic lights and the silence, the memories started rising. Steady, unwelcome, familiar. I remembered the first time I held Julia, a week after she was born. Her grandmother had placed her in my arms, whispering, "She's your do-over, Walter. All the softness you never had time for." And she was right. Every paycheck I'd saved, every sleepless night I'd spent balancing ledgers, I did with that little girl in mind. I saw myself in that old workshop behind our house, repairing furniture through the early 2000s, the smell of sawdust and varnish clinging to my shirt, while her tiny hands played with wood shavings on the floor. Every plank I sanded back then had a purpose. Her schooling, her safety, her start. When my wife passed, I'd made one promise: to keep Julia's future safe. That's what the trust was. Not just money, but proof that love could outlast death. And now, sitting in that car decades later, I realized the cost of that promise. It wasn't dollars. It was decades, 3 mortgages, 4 job changes, 52 weekends missed, all traded so my granddaughter could live unburdened by what I once carried. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "That's what fathers do," I murmured. "And fools too, sometimes." A green light blinked ahead. The kind of light that means move. Forward, not back. By the next town line, my anger had turned to clarity. I didn't need to shout. I just needed order. When the road straightened, so did my resolve. By dawn, the anger had cooled into something steadier, like a lake after a storm. I pulled into my driveway, the same little house I'd lived in since 1972. Paint peeling, gutters rusted, porch light buzzing faintly. But it was mine, paid for in full, and untouched by deceit. I made coffee strong enough to wake the dead and sat at the table where my wife used to read the morning paper. The chair across from me was still empty, still waiting. I opened the old wooden box again, the one I'd carried home after the shower. Inside were the documents I hadn't touched in decades. The trust letter, bank statements, original signatures. Each page felt like a conversation I'd postponed too long. I lined them neatly on the table. A small act, but it steadied me. Order before action. That was always my rule. The morning air crept through the cracked window, carrying the faint smell of salt from the Pacific. The radio played soft gospel from a local station. Voices that sounded like forgiveness, but I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I started building my routine back, simple, deliberate. I fed the neighbor's cat that wandered by each morning, tightened the hinges on the back door, wrote down every account number I remembered, cross-checking them with the trust's paperwork. I noticed something odd in the files, a form labeled transfer pending, with a date that hadn't yet passed. October 10th, 4 days away. That's when I realized they hadn't finished the move yet. The betrayal wasn't complete, just in motion. I underlined the date, circled the routing code, and felt something inside me click back into place. I wasn't powerless. Not yet. That night, I organized everything by category: financial, legal, sentimental. I stapled what mattered, discarded what didn't, and placed the trust letter on top. The handwriting of my wife, good conscience, stared back at me, steady as a compass. Before bed, I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and laid out my old blazer. Tomorrow I'd drive into town. There were still people who remembered me, a lawyer, a clerk, maybe even a banker or two who still owed me courtesy. The courthouse clock struck noon as I sat on the bench outside, papers folded neatly in my pocket. For the first time in weeks, there was nothing left to sign, no line to fill, no voice to steady, just stillness, thick and unfamiliar. I walked across the street to the small diner I'd visited for years. The waitress, June, poured my usual black coffee without asking. "Haven't seen you this dressed up since your retirement," she said, smiling. "Had to put old things in order," I replied. The cup was hot against my palms. I listened to the hum of the ceiling fan, the soft clink of forks against plates, the murmur of strangers. Life went on, unaware of ledgers being righted in quiet corners. For a moment, I felt peace. Not happiness, not relief. Just equilibrium, the kind that sits between what's done and what's coming. Outside, the afternoon light glowed pale against the courthouse windows. I could see my reflection in the glass, steady, older, almost foreign. Then I noticed a shape behind it. Gregory Miles, standing by the clerk's window, talking to someone. His shoulders tense, his face turned toward the door like a man rehearsing regret. I didn't move. I just sipped my coffee and let the silence between us stretch across the street. Some silences mean peace. This one meant warning. By morning, the calm had turned into something heavier, the kind of stillness that carries purpose. I hadn't planned to see him again so soon, but fate doesn't wait for permission. It knocks when truth is ready to be heard. The phone rang just after 8 a.m. "Mr. Carter?" a woman's voice asked. "This is Linda from the courthouse. A Mr. Gregory Miles was here early this morning, asking about your dispute filing. He wanted a copy. Did he get one?" I asked. "No, sir. We can't release that without your approval." "But he seemed unsettled." I thanked her and hung up. Outside, the sky was soft gray, that uncertain color between storm and sunrise. I took it as a sign. Truth was on its way to daylight. I drove to town, not in anger, but in duty. The diner sat across from the courthouse, same as always, same as yesterday. When I parked, Gregory's silver sedan was already there, half shaded by the jacaranda tree. He was sitting inside, in the same booth I'd occupied the day before. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled, phone on the table beside a half-empty cup of coffee. The look on his face wasn't guilt. It was calculation. I opened the door. The bell above it chimed softly, and June gave me a questioning glance. I nodded toward Gregory's booth. She just mouthed, "Be careful," then went back to refilling sugar jars. I walked over, slow and steady. He saw me coming but didn't stand. "Morning, Mr. Miles," I said, setting my hat on the table. "Mr. Carter," he replied, voice taut. "You've made things complicated. Honesty usually does," he sighed, leaning back. "You didn't have to go to the courthouse. I told you I'd handle everything quietly." "That's exactly why I didn't trust you to." He looked down at his hands, fingers interlaced tight. "You think I'm the villain here, but I was protecting them. Julia, her mother. You have no idea how fragile family finances can be these days." I stirred my coffee once, though I hadn't ordered it. "I survived recessions, layoffs, wars, and widowhood. I think I understand fragility just fine." He exhaled sharply, as if that kind of patience offended him. "You don't understand business. These trusts get absorbed, merged, optimized. Everyone benefits in the long run." I smiled faintly. "Everyone except the one whose name was forged." That stopped him. He shifted in his seat, throat tightening. "You can't prove—" I slid the folder across the table. The stamped copy sat on top. Received, pending review. His eyes flickered over it, then up to me. "I don't need to prove anything," I said. "The system will do that for me. I just needed to start the clock." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You're playing a dangerous game for a man your age. Once this hits review, it drags everyone down, your daughter included. You really want to humiliate your own family?" There it was, his last card. Not logic, not truth, but guilt. I met his gaze steadily. "You already did that for me." His jaw clenched. "You think you're noble, but you're just stubborn. A relic holding up progress." "Maybe," I said quietly, "but relics outlast trends. He laughed once, bitter and low. You don't scare me. I'm not trying to. What then? He snapped. You want me to apologize? Undo a done deal? No, I said. I want you to understand why this hurts, and then I want you to remember it. He stared, eyes narrowing. You think you're teaching me a lesson? Not teaching, I said softly. Just showing. Some men don't listen until the silence feels heavy enough. He rubbed his temples, muttering, This isn't going to end well for anyone. For once, I said, standing slowly, it's not supposed to. As I turned to leave, he spoke again, quieter this time, almost weary. You really loved her, didn't you? Your wife, I paused, hand on my hat. Every decent thing I ever did started from her. And you think she'd want this fight? I looked out the diner window at the courthouse steps, gleaming in morning light. No, but she'd want her promise kept. He didn't reply. I picked up my hat, nodded once, and walked toward the door. Wait, he said suddenly. I turned. He looked smaller now. Shoulders sagged, expression uncertain. I didn't forge your name, he said. Your daughter did. I only made sure the process went through. She said you'd already approved it. Said you wanted Julia taken care of if something happened to you. I studied him for a long moment. And you believed her? He hesitated. I wanted to. The truth of it hit harder than accusation. He hadn't been the mastermind, just a man who found convenience in someone else's weakness. Then that makes us both guilty, I said quietly. You for taking advantage, me for trusting too much. He leaned back, speechless. I placed $2 on the table for coffee I hadn't drunk. Consider this our last conversation, I said. As I stepped outside, the morning light felt colder. I crossed the street toward the courthouse, each step steady, deliberate. Behind me, I heard the faint jingle of the diner door and Gregory's voice calling my name. Not angry now, but afraid. I didn't turn around. The courthouse bell rang once as I reached the steps. That single chime carried more meaning than any argument could. I paused there, hand on the railing, and for the first time felt the weight of everything ease. Inside, I saw my reflection again, smaller, older, but standing. The kind of man who had nothing left to prove, only something left to finish. For a brief moment, I remembered Julia's laughter as a child, sticky hands from lemonade, her grandmother's voice saying, She's your do-over. Maybe she still could be, I thought. But only if truth cleared the way first. I straightened my jacket, walked inside, and handed my confirmation slip to the clerk. She smiled faintly. Back again, Mr. Carter? Just closing the circle, I said. And with that, the reckoning had begun. Not in shouts, not in threats, but in the quiet turning of paperwork, the echo of footsteps in marble halls, and one old man's dignity settling back into its rightful place. That same afternoon, I drove home under a low California sky, the kind of gray that feels like it's thinking. The courthouse papers sat in the passenger seat beside me, each page sealed and numbered, silent proof that. But something inside me hadn't settled. Gregory's last words clung like a burr to my conscience. Your daughter did it. It wasn't that I didn't believe him. It was that I didn't want to. When I got home, I placed the envelope on the kitchen counter, next to my late wife's photograph. Her smile faint, her eyes patient. She'd have told me to breathe, to let time confirm what emotion couldn't. So I did what she always did when questions were too heavy for words. I cleaned. Dishes, counters, the old shelf by the window. That's when I noticed an envelope wedged between two cookbooks, one I hadn't opened since the funeral. The handwriting was my daughter's. The postmark, 3 months old. Inside was a short letter, not emotional, not warm, just practical. Dad, we're restructuring Julia's future trust to ensure everything transitions smoothly. You don't need to worry about the details. Greg and I have it handled. I'll bring the new paperwork by next month for you to sign. Love, Karen. There was no signature, no return address, just that single word, love, like a stamp placed for formality. I set the letter down, exhaled slowly. My daughter, the child I'd raised on lessons of honesty and work, the one who'd cried on my shoulder when her marriage fell apart. She'd become the same kind of person she once swore she'd never be. The betrayal didn't sting anymore. It numbed. Like frostbite after too long in the cold. I pulled out the trust file again and compared the copies. Her signature, the forged one, wasn't perfect. It was rushed, angled slightly upward. She'd signed my name the way she always teased me for signing hers on birthday checks. Messy, confident, careless, and then, almost absurdly, I smiled. That little detail was her undoing. I knew what to do next. The following morning, I stopped by Thompson and Mayfield, an old legal office I'd used back in the 80s for property matters. The place hadn't changed. Same oak counter, same stale coffee smell, even the same brass plaque on the door. A younger man greeted me. "Morning, sir. How can I help you?" "Looking for Bill Thompson," I said. He paused. "That would be my father. He passed last year." "I'm Eric," I nodded slowly. He was a good man. "You've got his eyes," Eric smiled gently. "Thank you. What can I do for you?" I handed him the folder. "I need confirmation on a signature. One that isn't mine, but says it is." He scanned the papers quickly, then looked up. "This is serious. Who signed this?" "My daughter," I said simply. He leaned back, measuring my tone. "Do you want to press charges?" "Not yet," I said. "I want proof. Nothing more, nothing less." He nodded. "I can get you a forensic verification. Might take a day or two." "That's fine," I replied. "I've waited longer for less." I left the office feeling lighter. Not happy, just clear. Clarity has a way of thinning the fog in a man's mind. That evening, I sat on the porch with my coffee, watching the light fade across the street. A light drizzle began to fall, soft and rhythmic. It reminded me of the night my daughter was born. The same rain, the same air, only then it had smelled like hope. Now it smelled like reckoning. 2 days later, Eric called. "Mr. Carter, I've got the results. It's confirmed. Signatures forged. Ink age, pen pressure, everything inconsistent with your prior documents. Whoever did it used a scan or trace." I closed my eyes. "Thank you, son. There's more," he added. The transfer wasn't just a trust move. They attached a secondary clause, joint ownership revision. Once the transfer completed, your authority over distribution would have been void. In plain English, they were removing you entirely, sir. I let that hang in the air. The sound of my own breathing felt louder than it should. And the effective date? October 10th, the same one you flagged. So Gregory had been right about one thing. It wasn't over yet. But he was wrong about who I was fighting. This wasn't about greed anymore. It was about legacy. The idea of family meaning something beyond signatures and checks. That night, I wrote everything down in my journal. Dates, statements, voices, gestures, even the way my granddaughter had said old news at that shower. Because stories, once written, can't be rewritten by liars. I photocopied the journal pages and added them to my file. Then I called Eric back. "I'd like to extend the dispute," I said. "Add new evidence. I have proof of forgery and intent." He hesitated. "You want to name your daughter?" "Yes," I said. "But not for punishment. For record," he understood. "The law deals in proof, not emotion. You're doing the right thing." "I know," I said quietly. "That's what makes it hurt." The next morning, I mailed the updated documents. Each copy sealed in a manila envelope, addressed to both the courthouse and my daughter's residence. I included a short handwritten note inside hers. "Karen, I taught you that honesty costs less than deceit. You'll learn that again now, the way I learned patience. Dad, no anger, no accusation, just truth, stamped and postmarked." As the mail truck pulled away, I watched it disappear down the street. The sound of its tires on wet pavement felt like closure in motion. That evening, I returned to the diner. June refilled my coffee and asked, "You okay, honey?" I nodded slowly. "Getting there." "Whatever storm you're in," she said, "feels like it's starting to clear." "Not clear," I replied. "Just precise." Outside, the rain stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, reflecting off puddles in thin streaks of gold. That's when my phone buzzed. A new message from Karen, Dad. "We need to talk. It's not what you think." I stared at the screen for a long time, the glow lighting the creases in my hands. Maybe she wanted to explain. Maybe she wanted to negotiate. But for once, I didn't rush to reply. Truth doesn't chase apologies. It waits for them. I turned the phone face down on the counter, finished my coffee, and slid a few bills under the cup. As I stepped outside, the sky had gone clear, a soft, clean blue stretching endlessly west. The courthouse bell rang faintly in the distance, and in that quiet, I realized this wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about reclaiming the space my silence once left empty. Tomorrow, I'd walk back into that courthouse, not as the man who'd been betrayed, but as the man who'd kept the record straight. The world spins fast, but truth, when written, doesn't move. It stays exactly where it belongs, waiting for those who finally decide to look. Tomorrow, I'd walk in with evidence, not emotion. It wasn't family anymore. It was a case file. The morning after her message, I woke before the alarm. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator, a sound so steady it almost counted as company. I poured myself coffee. No sugar, no milk. The kind of bitterness that reminds you you're still alive. The folder sat on the table again, its edges soft from use, its contents sharper than ever. The documents now had weight. Truth always does once it's proven. I read the message from Karen again. "Dad, we need to talk. It's not what you think." Maybe not, I thought. But it's exactly what you did. By 8, I was already downtown. The courthouse parking lot gleamed under the weak morning sun, and a chill hung in the air. The kind that sneaks through your jacket and asks if you're sure about your next step. I was. Inside, I took a ticket and waited. When my number flashed, A112, I walked up to the counter and handed the clerk my file. "Same woman as before. Back again, Mr. Carter?" she said, smiling politely. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "I'd like to expand the dispute. Additional evidence, confirmed forgery, and new witness notes." She scanned the documents, her eyes narrowing slightly as she reached the forensic report. "This is solid," she murmured. "Do you want to request a hearing?" "Not yet," I said. "Just want it on record that I'm not withdrawing. I want it processed by procedure. Clean and public." She stamped each page with firm, deliberate motions, the sound echoing across the quiet office like a metronome marking the rhythm of justice. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Each mark sounded like a heartbeat coming back. When she was done, she handed me a copy stamped, filed, and accepted. "There," she said. "It's officially in the system. They'll contact you if your presence is required." "Thank you," I said, tucking it into my folder. I didn't walk out immediately. Instead, I turned to look at the courthouse seal hanging on the wall, an eagle with its wings spread wide, talons gripping a bundle of arrows and olive branches, power and peace, side by side. I nodded once to myself. The symbolism felt right. Outside, the sun had climbed higher, the day warming gently. I walked across the street to the diner again, because some habits feel like anchors in a storm. June was behind the counter, polishing a coffee pot. "Morning again, sweetheart," she said. "You keeping the courts busy?" "Just making sure the right people stay honest," I replied. She poured me a cup and leaned on the counter. Sounds like you've been doing that a long time. Too long, I said with a faint smile. Halfway through my coffee, my phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail notification. Unknown number, I listened. Dad, it's me. Please don't go through with this. You don't understand. Greg said you'd already signed months ago that you gave verbal consent. I didn't want to hurt you. I was trying to fix things. Call me. Her voice cracked at the end. That same tone she used when she was 8, standing in the hallway, caught lying about something small. Only now, the stakes weren't broken vases or curfews. I replayed the message once, then again. There was sorrow in it, but no truth. A man learns the difference after enough years. Tears can wet paper, but they don't erase ink. By noon, I was back at Thompson and Mayfield. Eric met me at the door, carrying a new envelope. Mr. Carter, he said, the clerk processed your filing fast, probably because of the forgery confirmation. But I also found something else. He handed me a printed sheet, an internal audit note. At the bottom, it read, Original trust modifications initiated via secondary counsel. Miles and Frey, LLP. I frowned. Miles? Eric nodded. Gregory Miles. He filed under his firm's umbrella. That was it, the missing puzzle piece. He hadn't just manipulated my daughter. He'd orchestrated the legal path himself. He's clever, I said softly. Used her name to open the door, then used his firm to walk through it. What do you want to do with this? Eric asked. Add it to the record, I said. Then send a copy to the Bar Association's Ethics Board. Quietly. Eric hesitated. You're sure? That could ruin him. I met his eyes. He ruined himself. I'm just notarizing it. He didn't argue. I'll take care of it personally. Before leaving, I shook his hand. You remind me of your father, I said. He smiled. He'd have liked to hear that. Outside, the day had softened. Golden light spilling across the courthouse windows. I sat in my truck for a while, watching people go in and out, each carrying their own small truths in envelopes, hoping someone official might listen. It made me think about the strange beauty of paperwork, how the same ink that could betray a man could also save him. Later that afternoon, I drove by my daughter's house. I didn't plan to stop, just to see. The curtains were open. Through the glass, I saw Julia on the couch, her face pale, phone in hand. Karen stood near the window, shoulders slumped, staring at nothing. A part of me wanted to knock, to end this the simple way. But the law was already moving. I didn't need words anymore. Instead, I left a small envelope in their mailbox. Inside was a copy of the forgery report and a handwritten note. This isn't anger, it's correction. You taught me the value of honesty once. Now I'm teaching it back. I didn't sign it. The truth didn't need my name anymore. It carried its own. By evening, I was back home, sitting by the window with a notepad open. I listed every step taken, each document filed, each conversation logged. It wasn't about revenge, it was about record. I wanted no confusion, no gaps, no emotion left unmeasured. As I wrote, I realized how steady my handwriting looked again. No tremor, no hesitation. Just clean, even lines. Justice, in its purest form, has a rhythm like that. Unhurried, but unstoppable. The phone rang once more around 7. Unknown number again. I answered. Mr. Carter, a deep voice said. This is Sergeant Lewis from the County Fraud Division. We've received documentation from your attorney about the forgery case. I just wanted to inform you it's been escalated for review. Thank you, Sergeant, I said. I trust the system. He paused. Not many people still do, sir. You'd be surprised. I'm old-fashioned, I said. I still believe paper can outlast lies. He chuckled softly. Well, in this case, it might. We ended the call. I stared at the clock. 7:42 p.m. The courthouse would close in 18 minutes. But the truth didn't need hours. It had already punched in for overtime. Outside, the world was still. The streetlights flickered on, one by one, their halos bright against the dusk. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked, then went silent. I closed my folder for the last time that day and placed it beside my wife's photo. "It's done," I whispered. Maybe she heard. Maybe she didn't. But the air in the room felt lighter, like something unseen had nodded in approval. I poured myself another cup of coffee, darker than before, and watched steam curl into the air. It felt like an ending, or maybe just an intermission before the echo, because truth doesn't end when it's filed. It lingers. It ripples through dinner tables, bank records, and sleepless nights. And as the night deepened, I found peace in that. Not the noisy kind that celebrates, but the quiet sort that knows the work is done. Clean, lawful, complete. For every paper I filed, a storm was quietly forming on theirs. Justice was finished on my end, but guilt was just getting started on theirs. The storm didn't roar in all at once. It arrived, the way guilt usually does, through whispers first, then looks. By Monday morning, the town felt different. At the diner, conversation stopped half a second too long when I walked in. At the post office, the clerk avoided eye contact. Even at church, Pastor Jim's handshake felt tighter than usual, his smile delayed by something he couldn't quite say. I didn't need to ask. Gregory had started talking. The local rumor mill works faster than any court. And when a man like him, polished, connected, with the gift of public charm, starts spinning his version, the town listens. It began with sympathy bait. Poor Greg. Old Mr. Carter's losing it. It's sad, really. Filing against his own daughter. Someone said he's got dementia. Can't tell what's real anymore. By afternoon, even my neighbor, a man I'd known for 20 years, asked gently, "Everything okay, Frank? You've been going to the courthouse a lot lately." "Everything's fine," I said, smiling politely, "just keeping the books balanced." He nodded uncertainly and went back to watering his lawn. I'd seen this before, how liars weaponize reputation. But the difference now was that I'd built mine on quiet honesty for decades. It might bend under gossip, but it wouldn't break. Still, Gregory wasn't done. The next day, I received an official notice, a character inquiry filed with the same court that held my dispute. It claimed I had erratic memory patterns and should be re-evaluated before any testimony could proceed. That was his move. Discredit the witness, not the evidence. I read it twice, then smiled. Classic corporate defense, I thought. When truth corners a guilty man, he calls the truth insane. I called Eric, my lawyer. He picked up on the first ring. "Mr. Carter, I saw the filing. It's baseless. They're trying to stall." "I figured," I said. "What do we do?" "Nothing. The system will chew it up and spit it out." "But," he paused, "there's something you should know." "What's that?" "Your daughter just withdrew her name from the trust. Complete disassociation. Legally, she's distancing herself." For a moment, the words didn't land. Then they did. Heavy, deliberate. She wasn't fighting beside him anymore. She was running from both of us. "She's scared," I said softly. "Yes," Eric said. "That's usually what guilt sounds like." That evening, I took a slow walk down Main Street. The air smelled of gasoline and rain, the kind of mix that makes old towns feel both alive and haunted. A poster for the upcoming harvest fair flapped loosely on the bulletin board outside the post office. I stopped to pin it back, the staple clicking softly. A small act of order amid chaos. When I turned, I saw her, Karen, standing near the edge of the sidewalk, holding her purse tight. Eyes red but dry. "Dad," she said quietly. I didn't answer. "Can we talk? Please?" I nodded once and followed her to the bench outside the florist's shop. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she began. "Greg told me he could protect what was left of Mom's trust, that it'd make sure Julia was taken care of for college and marriage." He said you agreed to it, that you didn't want to deal with the paperwork anymore. And you believed him? Her lip trembled. I wanted to. There it was again, that same line. The echo of Gregory's excuse. You forged my name, I said flatly. Tears welled up, but I kept my voice even. You could have asked me, Karen. One call, one visit. But you didn't. You let a stranger decide how to use your father's name. She shook her head, sobbing softly. I thought I was helping. Helping who? I asked. You? Him? Julia. She looked away. I don't know anymore. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of cars passing filled the space between us. Finally, she reached into her purse and pulled out a letter. I already told the court everything, she whispered. I gave them my statement. I said I was the one who signed it, that Greg pushed me to. You'll get confirmation soon. I took the letter, unread. You could have told me before it came to this. I was ashamed, she said. I nodded slowly. That's the right emotion. Just late. Her breath hitched. Are you ever going to forgive me? I looked toward the courthouse, its windows catching the last of the sunset. Forgiveness isn't the point, Karen. Truth is, she didn't answer. When I turned back, she was crying quietly. Not like a child seeking comfort, but like a woman who'd finally met the cost of silence. I stood. Go home, take care of your daughter. The law will handle the rest. As I walked away, she called out softly, Dad, I'm sorry, I didn't stop. Not because I didn't hear her, but because sorry doesn't fix signatures. That night, the real ambush began. Around 9 p.m., sitting through reportwand, my phone buzzed with messages. Calls from unknown numbers. Texts filled with accusations. You ruined your own family. Old man, she's your daughter. How could you? Julia's wedding's off now. Happy? And then a final voicemail. Gregory's voice. Calm. You may think you've won, but you've embarrassed your family, destroyed your legacy. They'll remember you as bitter, not brave. You can't fight time, Carter. You're already past it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The law doesn't argue with emotion. It records it. So I wrote it all down in my notebook. 9:13 p.m. Voicemail from Gregory Miles. Threats implied. Defamation ongoing. I saved the file to a USB drive and labeled it Miles Correspondence. Evidence doesn't need to shout. It just needs to exist. The next morning, I returned to the courthouse. Same suit, same coffee, same steadiness. The clerk looked up as I handed her a sealed envelope. What's this? She asked. Supplemental evidence, I said. For the ongoing fraud and defamation case. She nodded. You're thorough, Mr. Carter. Habit, I said. Paper remembers better than people. As I left, I caught sight of Gregory standing outside by his car, talking to someone on the phone. He saw me and froze for a fraction of a second, just enough to betray fear. He ended the call quickly and walked over, his voice sharp but trembling. You're dragging my firm into this, you old fool. Do you have any idea what you're doing? I met his gaze. Yes, I'm making sure truth stays where it belongs. He clenched his jaw. You're destroying your daughter's life. No, I said. You already did. I'm just filing the paperwork. He stepped closer, but I didn't flinch. I just looked at him. Not with anger, not with pity, just with the kind of stillness that makes guilty men talk too much. You think you can beat me with words on paper? He hissed. No, I said quietly. I already did. For the first time, he didn't have a reply. His confidence faltered. He turned abruptly, muttering something under his breath, and drove off. I watched his car disappear down the road, the sound of his engine fading like a lie running out of breath. The next day, I received a call from Eric. Congratulations, he said. The Ethics Board has officially opened an inquiry into Miles and Frey. They're requesting his firm's involvement records. You might not hear from him again. I sat there, silent for a long time, Not proud, not vengeful, just still. Outside my window, a lone bird landed on the railing, feathers ruffled from the wind. It looked around, cautious, then started to sing. Not loudly, but enough to remind me the world still knew how to start over. Justice isn't thunder. It's paperwork, patience, and songbirds returning after the storm. By the time Friday came, the truth wasn't a secret anymore. It had a case number. The county record office had finalized my submission. My dispute, the forged signature, the forensic confirmation, the bar complaint, all officially registered, stamped, and publicly visible. I hadn't gone looking for glory, but justice has a way of showing up on its own schedule. That morning, the courthouse steps were busier than usual. Reporters weren't there, just townsfolk. Faces I'd known for decades, the same people who once watched my daughter's softball games or came to our church picnics. But their eyes were different now. Curious. Hesitant. A few nodded as I passed. Gregory was already there. He stood near the base of the steps, phone in hand, jaw tight, suit pressed sharp enough to cut air. When our eyes met, he tried for a smile, but it came out wrong. Half defensive, half defeated. "Mr. Carter," he said, voice low, "you didn't have to make this a spectacle." "This isn't a spectacle," I said. "It's the record correcting itself." He glanced around, noticing the quiet crowd watching from across the street. The florist, the bank teller, even June from the diner, wiping her hands on her apron. "You think this means something?" he muttered. "People forget fast." "Maybe," I said, stepping closer, "but the court doesn't." I handed him a copy of the stamped order. Protective order, County of Monterey, Case 23-1174B. His name was on it, underlined in black. It barred him from contacting me or my family and froze any pending actions involving the trust. He stared at it, color draining from his face. "You went too far." "No," I said quietly. "You did. I just followed directions." He crumpled the edge of the paper slightly, his hand trembling. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" I looked at him for a long moment. This man who'd tried to out-talk truth. "Enjoyment isn't justice," I said. "It's just relief in cleaner clothes." He didn't respond. The courthouse door opened behind us, and a clerk called my name. "Mr. Carter, they'll need your confirmation signature inside." I nodded and walked past him, feeling his stare on my back the whole way. Inside, the air was cool, still, official. The clerk led me to a counter, papers already laid out. "This confirms your petition and protective order," she said. "Once you sign, it becomes enforceable immediately." I picked up the pen, my hand steady. "You know," I said almost to myself, "people think revenge feels like thunder. But it sounds more like this." The pen tip met the paper. One smooth stroke. F.H. Carter. Click. The pen capped shut. The clerk nodded respectfully. "You did everything by the book, sir. The judge even commented on your documentation, said it was unusually meticulous." I smiled faintly. "My wife taught me to keep receipts. For everything that matters." When I stepped back outside, the sunlight had shifted. High noon, bright, almost blinding. The crowd had thinned, but a few lingered. June caught my eye first. She gave a small wave and mouthed, "Good job, Frank." Then I noticed something unexpected. Karen. She stood on the opposite sidewalk, hands clasped, face pale but calm. Julia was beside her, holding her mother's arm, eyes red-rimmed but dry. I froze. For a moment, everything else faded. Courthouse, crowd, even Gregory's glare. Just them. Karen walked forward slowly. No words, no tears, just a small folded paper in her hand. She stopped a few feet away and extended it. "I filed my own affidavit," she said quietly. "Everything you said. It was true. Greg admitted it last night. He's being investigated by the board. I didn't take the paper right away. Why are you telling me this here? Because you taught me that truth shouldn't hide behind doors. For the first time in months, I saw her the way I used to. Not as the woman who'd betrayed my name, but as the girl who once helped me fix fence posts in the yard. Barefoot and stubborn, determined to prove she could. I'm sorry. Dad, she said again. This time, I believed her. Before I could reply, Gregory's voice cut through the air. Karen, don't you dare. She turned sharply, her voice steady. It's over, Greg. They have everything. His mouth opened, then shut. The words didn't come. A few onlookers turned away, embarrassed by the scene, but others stayed, quiet, listening. He tried one last defense. You'll regret siding with him. He's not the man you think, neither are you, she said, firm but calm. It was the kind of silence that comes after a truth lands where it belongs. Heavy, irreversible. I placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Go home, Karen. Let the law handle what's left. She nodded, eyes brimming again, and walked away with Julia. Gregory stood there, his reputation crumbling in real time. I didn't need to say anything. The papers, the witnesses, and his own words had already done the talking. A sheriff's deputy approached a few minutes later. Mr. Miles, he called out, we've got some questions for you. Regarding the active complaint, Gregory looked at me one last time, a mixture of anger and disbelief. Before, following the deputy toward the courthouse, steps. The sunlight hit the glass doors just right, reflecting his image as he walked in. One man caught in his own maze of paperwork and lies. For the first time in years, I breathed fully. The weight in my chest lifted, not gone, but lighter. I looked around. Life was still happening. A couple crossing the street, kids laughing near the park, the hum of traffic down the hill. The world hadn't stopped for justice, but it had noticed it. June walked over, wiping her hands on her apron again. Guess the truth finally clocked in, huh? I smiled. Right on time, she nodded toward the courthouse. You gonna celebrate? Already did, I said. Just didn't need music. We both laughed softly, the kind of laugh that sounds like closure. As I turned to leave, I paused at the base of the steps. The courthouse flag fluttered in the wind, sharp, bright against the blue. Beneath it, the seal gleamed like a promise kept. Justice had never looked dramatic to me. It looked like this: paperwork finished, silence restored, decency still standing. I walked to my truck, keys cool in my palm. For a brief second, I caught my reflection in the side mirror. Tired eyes, but steady. Maybe this was how peace looked at 84. Not loud, not triumphant, but earned. Justice, I learned, doesn't make noise when it settles. It just changes the air around you, quietly, like dawn sneaking into a tired house. 2 weeks passed. The courthouse filings turned into routine updates, the phone calls slowed, and the mailbox stopped spitting out letters with legal headers. Gregory's name appeared once more, this time in a local paper. Financial advisor under investigation for fraudulent trust modifications. It wasn't front-page news, just a small column beside a grocery ad. But truth doesn't need headlines. It only needs permanence. I clipped the article and folded it neatly into the wooden box, the same one that started it all. Inside, the papers now formed a different story. Not of betrayal, but of restoration. That morning, I made 2 cups of coffee, one for myself, one for the empty chair across from me. My wife's chair. Guess what? I said softly. It's done. The steam curled upward, the room still smelling faintly of paper and brewed hope. I hadn't realized how heavy silence had become until it turned peaceful again. That afternoon, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, Julia stood there. Hair tied back, hands fidgeting with the strap of her purse. "Hi, Grandpa," she said quietly. It was the first time I'd seen her since the bridal shower. Her voice, softer now, carried none of that careless pride. "Just truth. Come in," I said, stepping aside. She looked around, her eyes pausing on the old photographs. Her grandmother's smile frozen mid-laugh, her mother's high school portrait, the framed trust letter in its glass casing. "I didn't know," she said finally, "about what Mom and Greg did. Not until everything fell apart." "I believe you," I said. "You were caught in a grown-up storm." She nodded, biting her lip. "Mom told me you saved us. Legally, I mean. The trust. It's still in my name." "It's yours," I said. "Always was." Just with the right ink this time. Her eyes filled, tears pooling but not falling. "You could have destroyed her, Grandpa. You could have dragged her name through court." I shook my head. "You don't fix a family by burning what's left. You fix it by filing what's true and letting time do the sentencing." She smiled faintly. "You sound like Grandma." "That's the best compliment I'll ever get," I said, chuckling. Julia reached into her purse and pulled out a small box, wrapped in plain white paper. "I brought something," she said. I opened it. Inside was my old pocket watch, the one her grandmother had given me in 1968. I hadn't seen it since Julia's high school graduation. "You left it in our attic years ago," she said. "I thought you'd want it back." I turned it over, running my thumb along the engraved initials. WHC. Time reveals character. "Your grandmother had that inscribed," I said softly. "Guess she knew something I didn't," Julia smiled. She always did. We sat in silence for a while, not awkward, just steady. The kind of silence that feels like soil being watered again after drought. Finally, Julia spoke. I called off the wedding. I looked at her, surprised, but not shocked. "He tried to talk me out of it," she said. "Said we could start fresh. But I realized something. Starting fresh doesn't mean pretending the stain wasn't there. It means cleaning it," I nodded slowly. "That's wisdom most people don't find until too late." She looked down at her hands. "I was so cruel to you that day, at the shower." I leaned back. "You were young, excited, and surrounded by noise. Sometimes love makes people careless with the quiet ones." Tears finally fell. "I'm sorry, Grandpa." I reached across the table and took her hand gently. "You just gave me what I wanted more than anything." "What's that?" An honest apology. We both smiled. Later that week, the mail brought one last envelope, this one from the courthouse. Inside, case closed. Resolution filed, assets restored. 3 lines, 10 words. That's all it took to end a storm that began with a signature. I placed it inside the wooden box, sealing it with care. The lid creaked as it shut. A small, satisfying sound, like punctuation at the end of a long paragraph. That night, I walked out to the porch. The sky was clear, stars sharp and familiar. Somewhere down the block, a radio played faint country music, the same kind my wife used to hum when she cooked Sunday breakfast. I closed my eyes, let the cool breeze carry the smell of jasmine and asphalt. For the first time in years, my thoughts didn't circle back to worry. They drifted forward, toward peace. A week later, I received an unexpected visitor, Sergeant Lewis, the officer from the Fraud Division. "Evening, Mr. Carter," he said, tipping his hat. "Thought I'd deliver this in person." He handed me a folded letter. It was from the State Bar. Subject: disciplinary action. Gregory Miles' license revoked. Investigation concluded. I read it once, twice. "Well," I said softly, "seems the law still works when you give it time." Lewis smiled. "Most folks don't have your patience. They shout, break things, make noise. You just filed papers." "Noise fades," I said. "Paper stays," he chuckled. "If every man your age thought like that, my job'd be easier." After he left, I sat back on the porch, and watched the evening fade. The sun sank behind the oak trees, painting everything gold. I thought of my wife again, her calm voice, her steady hands, her belief that good people didn't need to shout to be heard. She'd been right, as always. That Sunday, Karen came by, unannounced, but welcome. She carried a bag of groceries and a shy smile. "Thought you could use some home-cooked food," she said. "Depends," I said. "Are you still trying to poison me with low-sodium nonsense?" She laughed. The first real laugh I'd heard from her in months. Maybe just a little. We spent the afternoon in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, cooking in the same rhythm we once shared decades ago. The quiet between us wasn't tense anymore. It was healing. At dinner, Julia joined us, bringing fresh bread from the bakery. We ate together, 3 generations, 1 table. No lawyers, no signatures, no lies, just family. When we finished, Karen looked at me with teary eyes. "You saved us, Dad," I smiled. "No, I just stopped the bleeding." Later that night, after they left, I opened my journal one last time. I wrote, "Justice came. Not loud, but lawful. Forgiveness followed. Not fast, but honest. And the past. It finally stayed where it belonged." I closed the book and set it beside the wooden box. Both were full, one with truth, the other with lessons. I turned off the light, walked out to the porch, and sat beneath the wide California moon. The world was still, not silent, but at peace. For the first time since that bridal shower, I wasn't waiting for anything. The record was clean. The heart was lighter. The morning after everything finally settled, the world felt normal again, not perfect, just steady, quiet, ordinary. The kind of day you earn after a long fight. Not because you won something, but because you didn't lose yourself along the way. The sunlight came through the kitchen curtains, soft and golden, resting on the table that had seen years of coffee cups, tears, laughter, and bills. The wooden box sat there too, sealed, labeled, and done. My story, in documents, the old pocket watch Julia returned to me ticked faintly beside it. Each click was steady, rhythmic, alive. Time, the truest judge of all, had given its verdict. Later that morning, I walked down to the park by the lake, the same place where I used to take Karen and Julia when she was small, when life was still just picnics, scraped knees, and melted ice cream. The benches were new, but the trees were the same. I sat under the biggest one, the oak that always dropped its acorns early, and watched the water ripple. A few kids were playing nearby, chasing each other with laughter that reminded me of years gone by. One of them tripped, fell, and started crying. His father rushed over, brushed him off gently, and said, "You're okay, buddy. Just a bump." We get up again. Those words stayed with me. We get up again. That's all this had ever been. Not revenge, not punishment, but getting back up. Quietly, completely, legally. The kind of victory you don't toast to, but you remember forever. By noon, I walked past the diner one last time. June was inside, refilling sugar jars. She saw me, smiled, and pointed to my usual seat. "Coffee?" she mouthed through the window. I shook my head, smiling. "Not today," she nodded, that knowing kind of nod, like a woman who'd watched a man's whole story play out one cup at a time. I crossed the street slowly, each step lighter than the last. A mail truck passed by, and for once, I didn't brace myself. No more envelopes, no more signatures, no more letters with court stamps. Just life again. That evening, Karen called. Her voice was calm, not shaky, not apologetic. Just steady. "Dad, we're having dinner Sunday," she said. "Just us. You, me, Julia. No phones, no talking about the past. Just dinner," I smiled. "I'll bring dessert. Homemade?" she asked, laughing. I'll try not to burn it this time." The laugh that followed was soft, clean, the kind that sounds like forgiveness when it finally finds its way home. After we hung up, I walked out to the porch again. The sun was setting slow, painting everything in copper and quiet fire. The wind carried the smell of someone grilling a few blocks down, the faint laughter of neighbors, the hum of a world that didn't owe me anything but peace. And that was plenty. I took out my notebook one final time, the same one that held every note, date, and line from this whole ordeal. I flipped through its pages, each one a reminder that justice doesn't require fury, only patience. On the very last page, I wrote, "In the end, I didn't raise my voice. I raised my proof. The world didn't cheer, but it did notice, and that's enough for me." I closed the notebook, set it on the table beside the pocket watch, and leaned back. The ticking continued, slow, certain, eternal. I thought of my wife again, her laughter, her grace, her belief that doing right wasn't about winning, it was about restoring balance. And maybe that's what I'd done, restored balance. As the last light faded, Julia's message came through. "Grandpa, Mom told me everything. I'm proud of you. You didn't just save the trust, you saved our family's name." I stared at those words for a long moment. Then I typed back, "No, sweetheart. The truth did. I just gave it room to speak." I watched the sky turn from gold to violet, then to that deep, endless blue only old evenings know. The air grew cool. Somewhere, a church bell rang in the distance. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. And I smiled. Because after everything, the betrayal, the silence, the legality, the patience, I was still here, still standing, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like old news, I felt like closure. If this story moved you, please like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for listening.